Clapper, the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, who has served that role in President Obama's administration, announced in this open hearing, according to these reports, that he submitted his resignation last night. He said, "I have 64 days left in this office." He expressed a sense of relief, perhaps, that he was ready to move on. There's no doubt that there will be lots of resignations of this nature to follow, because pretty much Donald Trump, the president-elect, will begin with a clean slate. But he has had a difficult tenure at times, the DNI, James Clapper, and he has announced this morning, according to these reports, that he is indeed moving on. So more reaction to that as we go through here. In the meanwhile, a steady stream of high-profile visitors. There are cameras that are just set up watching everybody go through Trump Tower, because it's a veritable parade of potential cabinet picks and administrators who may be part of the Trump administration. Lots of people vying for certain spots out there, and not a lot on exactly who will get them. A big day also on Capitol Hill for the vice president-elect, as Mike Pence has meetings there that are set up throughout the day with Senate and House leaders from both parties, as he begins to play what will be a very pivotal role for Mike Pence in terms of getting through legislation on tax reform, on Obamacare. All of that is really at the top of the list from what we've heard from the Trump administration so far, or the transition team. So we welcome you now to Hour 2 of America's Newsroom. I'm Martha McCallum.
And I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning. The Trump team is screening candidates with an eye toward finding the right people to carry out the vision of Donald Trump. Senior advisor Kellyanne Conway with us last hour right here, describing how the effort is going, both here in New York and at the official transition offices in Washington, D.C., when she said this.
Obviously a ton of work to do, but we're doing it methodically and very calmly. And the president-elect has slid into this role amazingly well, because he's a transactional guy. He's somebody who's used to reviewing information, getting many different inputs, getting the advice of many different counselors, and then making his decision.
So if you look back at history, Presidents Reagan, Clinton, Bush 43 waiting 6 weeks before making their first cabinet picks, and President-elect Obama making a single appointment in week 3. He finished in late December of 2008.
Yeah, we're just a little over a week in. So it would actually be somewhat unusual to be making too many picks at this stage of the game, even though there's a lot of discussion about what's taking so long. So Brett Baer joins us now, anchor of Special Report. Brett, good morning to you. Good to see you this morning.
Martha, good morning.
I want to start by getting your reaction to this news that the director of the DNI has resigned in that hearing this morning. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think expected. I think, as you said, there will be a lot of resignations that we hear about very quickly. This hearing is an opportunity basically for his swan song up on Capitol Hill. As you rightly point out, he's had a tough run in some of those hearings, saying things that he didn't mean to say and had to clean up later. But Clapper is somebody who has dedicated himself, obviously, to this job. As you look at that hearing on Capitol Hill, the chairman of that hearing in the House Intelligence Committee is Devin Nunes. He is going to be a guest on Special Report tonight, and we'll talk about, there he is right there, we'll talk about all of the issues with intelligence in the incoming Trump administration, and perhaps some of the key spots that may be coming down the pike very soon.
I mean, it's such a pivotal role. It was a role that was created after September 11th to get all of these agencies to talk to each other. And we know that there are investigations into potential Islamic terrorist attacks in almost every state in this nation. So he has a very central role, and whoever takes on that job is going to have a full plate ahead of them as well. So in terms of what we're hearing about the transition and the process, Brett, and we watch more and more people come in, Nikki Haley's name thrown into the mix late yesterday as well. What's your take from where you sit in Washington?
Well, listen, this is a dangerous time just because people are throwing out names and just seeing if they stick on the wall. I mean, that's where the process is as far as reporting on it. There's very little nailing down actual decisions until they're announced. So it's the fun parlor game in Washington, but it's a little bit frustrating to get to the person. I think there are a few people, Martha, in the potential administration who have a choice. They were early in on the Trump campaign. For example, Jeff Sessions. He's named for a couple of possible positions because I think the deference is to his choice, because he was in so early with Mr. Trump on his campaign. I do think that they're going through some vetting, and it is a two-way street, remember. It is the offer of the job, but that person has to look at the paperwork, look at all that's entailed in this job, and say, okay, I'm in.
Yeah.
Some people get there quicker than others.
And there's also some feedback from Capitol Hill about how difficult or how easy certain people's confirmation process might be, right?
Well, exactly. And, you know, you get some of these guys on Wall Street, for example, some of their background is very complicated, and and there are potential minefields out there. So, you know, one of the reasons a lot of people talk about that we don't have the best in government is because the process is pretty complex.
That's for sure.
To go through the paperwork and to go through the hearing to put your life out there in front of everybody.
Yeah, we talked to John Sununu yesterday, and he said that his message, he said, you know, I'm not asked, but if I were asked, I would tell them to slow down. And when you look at that chart that we put up in the beginning of our introduction to you, Brett, you know, people do take their time. You look at Ronald Reagan, who made the decisions in week 6. We are barely in the second week of this process, but there's all this focus on, you know, oh, it's all chaotic, and Donald Trump, you know, comes from the outside, so he must not know what he's doing. But you know, we got that chart up again. It really shows that people do take their time. A close look at that chart.
You know, I mean, look, President Obama, the first pick, nearly 3 weeks. It was in week 3. But then, as you rightly point out, Ronald Reagan, Jimmy Carter, it takes a long time. Bush 43 is a little different because he started late with the recount.
Yeah.
But his process really started right after the election, if you remember. Dick Cheney running that process, eventually becoming the person who ran a lot in that administration. But I think if you look at that chart and then you look at the headlines, there is a real disconnect. And 1 week and 1 day, as of yesterday, you could give them a little breathing space.
Yeah, they're big decisions, and there's a good reason to take your time. Now that we've got all of America looking for their reading glasses to take a look at that chart. Brett,